It was a watershed year, no question about it. There was changes in the entire way the recording industry was putting out music. Fewer and fewer albums were being produced, and more compact discs were becoming the norm. It was hard, and it's going to get harder as we go through the years, but this win, I managed to pull together vinyl for all of them. There's a mix of it, and number one might surprise you because it's not what most people will expect for this year. The year was 1987. I'm TC Kirkham. This is Vinyl Recall. Hey VC, thanks for joining me. I'm TC Kirkham, TKR Video Central and the Kirkham Report. Welcome to Vinyl Recall. I'm going to show off my top 10 albums of 1987, but before I do that, I want to tell you I'm a little bit under the weather. I've been suffering from some kind of stomach ailment the last couple of days. Not feeling my best, so I hope I look and sound okay. But hopefully, we'll get through it. 1987. Was the year I started buying more and more compact discs, and as the end of the year came along, I was buying more compact discs than vinyl because more and more of the vinyl was going away. Where I lived in Lancaster, Ohio, we had 3 record stores. Buzzard's Nest would go under in 1987 or 88, and it was long after I stopped working there. And then in 1987, the River Valley Mall opened, and we had 2 new stores there, Record Town and National Record Mart. I got to know them quite well, but they were stocking mostly CDs, not LPs. CDs were the end thing. So it was hard to find good vinyl unless you got it through the record clubs after this, and I did some of that, but not a lot. But 1987 was a good year. Musically all around, it was quite a different year. Last week on 86, I showed you a lot of new age stuff that I had become enamored with. This year, not so much, but there was some other good stuff out, including one of my favorite albums of all time. And surprisingly, the #1 album, which qualifies as that one of the favorite albums of all time, is not what most of you might think it would be for 1987. I want to apologize for the fan. It is hella hot in here. We've had severe weather coming through overnight the last couple of days, and it's kind of nuts. In any case, let's get to it. The top 10 vinyl albums of 1987. Starting with number 10. I want to check something real quick while I'm talking about this. I've always loved this gentleman's voice. He was a favorite of mine from when he first appeared as the lead singer of the band that he was known for. But when he started doing solo stuff, it was a revelation because he was doing different stuff than what he would do normally. Although it wasn't terribly different from the band, it was still really good, and I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed it a lot. The first solo album, I want to say, came out in 1987, and this is what I remember, but the cover changed from country to country, I think, because what I have and what I've seen online in different places is not always the same. But it's still a great album, and it was his debut as a solo artist, and really fantastic. Number 10, Lou Gramm and Ready or Not. Lou Gramm, of course, the lead singer of Foreigner for many, many years. He would continue on with Foreigner off and on through the next 20 years. He also, in the 90s, he was battling a brain tumor, if I'm not mistaken. This album features his first big hit Midnight Blue, along with Ready or Not, Heartache, Time, If I Don't Have You, She's Got to Know, Arrow Through Your Heart, Until I Make You Mine, Chain of Love, and Lover Come Back. It was a little bit more laid back, more like the softer stuff that Foreigner did, like I Want to Know What Love Is, or Waiting for a Girl Like You, rather than the rock out stuff. But it was excellent all the way around, and Lou has always been one of my favorite vocalists. Foreigner is one of the bands I never got to see live. I wish I had. They were always fantastic, and I think that the album probably deserves better, because I don't hear a lot of people talking about it. Midnight Blue was a pretty big hit too. Not as big as the second album's Just Between You and Me was, but Lou Gramm, Ready or Not, number 10. Now, number 9, you can laugh at me if you want to, but you know, this album is full of dynamically good pop music. These 4 guys, brought together by audition, were really good at what they did. They were rockers by trade. All of them, you know, at least played some instruments. They wrote some of their own material, unlike the original band of 20 years earlier. But the show was awful. I'm the first person to admit that, even though I love the music and I love the album, and I've seen other people talk about the album in the vinyl community and find out it's actually damn good, considering how terrible the show was. The show was a mistake in concept. And these guys would go on to do other stuff in the industry, and not always as successful, and of course this wasn't that successful, but the album deserved way better, because it is a perfect pop rock album of the 1980s. Number 9 on my 1987 list, New Monkeys by New Monkeys. Larry Saltis, Jared Chandler, Dino Kovas, and Marty Ross. Larry Saltis, the blonde, on the left side, would later lead 2 other bands, Colorvine and Tower City, both of which released some great CDs from the late mid-90s through the early 2000s. Jared Chandler went on to do a lot of military stuff. He joined the Air Force and was doing all kinds of stuff. And Dino continued to do comedy. Marty continued to songwrite and did quite a bit. They actually have all stayed in touch, have stayed friends over the years. They've gotten together for a couple of reunions that have been absolutely fun. You can see a lot of them on YouTube. What I Want, Do It Again, I Don't Know, The Way She Moves, Boy Inside the Man, Burning Desire, Whatever It Takes, Affection, Carlene, Corner of My Eye, and Turn It Up, which was the theme from the television show. Larry and Dino do vocals on the best known songs, What I Want, and was Larry and Marty. Turn It Up is Dino. Great power pop for the late 1980s. And like I said, the show does suck, but you don't have to see the show to enjoy the music. Number 9, New Monkeys. Number 8 on my list, I don't think this is going to surprise anybody. I am going to do an influencers on her later this season. But this was the comeback album that brought her back to the charts for the first time in several years, and deservedly so, because she deserves to be on the charts all the time. And she has. Every decade since the 1960s. This was her 80s comeback album, 1987's Cher by Cher. This album was her 3rd album to use the title Cher. The first album came out in the 1960s. The second album, later retitled Gypsies, Tramps, and Thieves, was just titled Cher when it came out, and this one in the 80s. This album, I can't even begin to read the blue on blue writing. I'm going to need my lamp here. Excuse me. This is the album that included I Found Someone, We All Sleep Alone, Bang Bang, Main Man, Give Our Love a Fighting Chance, Perfection, Dangerous Times, Working Girl, Hard Enough, Getting Over You, and I think that's it, and Skin Deep is the other one. I love her remake of her classic song, Bang Bang, which had been done in the 60s. This one features Bon Jovi on guitars. A lot of great stuff from there. But I Found Someone, We All Sleep Alone, both big hits. She had spent the last 5 years perfecting her acting career. Of course, won an Oscar for Moonstruck in 1985 or 86. And she's still brilliant. Her most recent release, 2018's Dancing Queen, is an all ABBA cover album inspired by her position in the film Mamma Mia, Here We Go Again. Really terrific music. They knew what they were doing. Geffen Records put her with some great producers and great songwriters, and every 10 years or so, she has a renaissance, and this was the 80s one. Number 8 on my list, Cher by Cher. Number 7 for 1987. I mean, really? This is a seminal album. I did not have this on vinyl until I won a copy of it on a vinyl community contest from Dylan over at the Record Spinner. And I know a lot of you don't think I like heavy metal. I'm a pop guy, but I have my metal fandom too, and this is one of them, and my wife is nuts for them. From 1987, Appetite for Destruction, Guns N' Roses. This is the 2013 reissue, I believe, on 180 gram vinyl. Of course, this is their breakthrough album. Again, the print is too small. Welcome to the Jungle, It's So Easy, Night Train, Out to Get Me, Mr. Brownstone, Paradise City, My Michelle, Think About You, Sweet Child of Mine, You're Crazy, Anything Goes, and Rocket Queen. This is a seminal 80s album. And I saw the dudes from the Vinyl Den talking the other day about hair metal and how Guns N' Roses were thrown into that category. Were they? Really? I don't think so. And they don't deserve to be. They're not hair metal. I mean, if you don't include the fact that Slash's natural curly do, plus Duff McKagan and Axl's frizzed out hair in the video for Welcome to the Jungle. But this is hard rock at its finest in the late 80s, and I don't think they'd ever come close to this again, or at least not too close to it. They've had a couple of other albums over the years that were fantastic, but I don't know. We'll see when we get there. But in any case, number 7 for 1987, classic music, Guns N' Roses, Appetite for Destruction. Sorry about that. Okay, now we're going to get into the weird stuff as far as I'm concerned, because I'm a pop guy. This album was a hit everywhere around the world except the United States. Never understood that. The U.S. turned their back on these three in 1981, except for a couple of minor hits from a soundtrack in 1984. They were pretty much persona non grata with radio and the charts from 1981 to 1989. Which doesn't make any sense, because this album, one of their best albums ever, had one of their biggest hits ever everywhere in the world except the U.S. I will never understand why the U.S. turned their nose up at this. The following album brought them back to the top 10 on the pop chart in the U.S., but they deserved it with this album and its big single. Number 6, the Bee Gees, ESP, from 1987, of course. This featured their worldwide smash, You Win Again, which peaked at number, 76 here in the States. Along with ESP, Live or Die, Hold Me Like a Child, Giving Up the Ghost, The Longest Night, This Is Your Life, Angela, Overnight, Crazy for Your Love, Back to Funk, and the reprise of ESP. Never understand why the States did not get it behind this album. This album was fantastic. Came with lyric sleeve, and it was their first in years on Warner Brothers. Previously, they'd been on RSO in the States. The next album, brought them back to the top 10 on the pop chart, and the top 5, if not number 1, on the AC chart, not with just one, but with the follow-up single Bodyguard, which was stupendously good. So is this album. Why doesn't America get ESP? I don't know. England got it, Australia got it, everywhere else got it except the States. But man, it was a true to form return for them. Number 6 for 1987, Bee Gees and ESP. Number 5, another one that I did not have on vinyl. I had on CD and on digital. Actually, I don't know if I have the CD. I may only have the digital on this. I did not have this on vinyl until I started with the Black Box Record Club. They shipped it to me a couple years ago. My jaws dropped. And this is a Music on Vinyl reissue. It is a top-notch album. And I'm going to get it out of the sleeve because I'm going to have to pull it out to read off what it is here. But I hate these sticky sleeves. So I want to give you the songs too. And I can't do that without reading it. But man, this album is awesome. Number 5, Surfing with the Alien, Joe Satriani. This is the album that introduced me to Joe Satriani in a big way. What a magnificent set of songs on here. Surfing with the Alien, Ice 9, Crushing Day, one of my favorite songs by him. Always with Me, Always with You, Satch Boogie, Hill of a Skull, Circles, Lords of Karma, Midnight, and Echo. Back when Joe had hair. He's been bald for quite a while. This is, as I said, the Music on Vinyl reissue from 2014? No, 2010. Wow, this came out in 2010 on Music on Vinyl. I was never that much into instrumental guitar, rock guitar, until I found Joe Satriani. I loved easy listening guitar. I liked flamenco. I liked new age guitar. Satriani came along. Not of This Earth was out the year before, I believe. And the local, the Blitz, or were they the Blitz yet? Might have been QFM in Columbus. Were playing Serving with the Alien and Crushing Day. Oh my God, I love this album. I have been a huge Satriani fan all the way around ever since. I did a rank this on my favorite stuff by him. He's just magnificent. And there's no doubt in my mind that he will be remembered as one of the guitar greats 100 years from now. Even when the TikTok generation are playing, 1.87 100ths of a second of his music and calling it a hit. That's incredibly cynical, I know, but wow, it is good. Number 5 from 1987, Surfing with the Alien, Joe Satriani. Thank you to Black Box for sending that to me. Number 4, this album surprised me. And when I say that, I don't mean it surprised me from the quality. It surprised me in the fact that I'd been a fan of these two since I was a kid and had no idea it was coming out until it came out. They had been out of the music industry pretty much for the past 10 or 11 years. When they had been in the industry before, they were teenagers, 14, 15, 16, doing stuff in the teeny bopper style, teen pop stuff. And I love those. I have the 2 albums they released then. I have the 3rd album, the unreleased album, on digital. It was finally released in 96, I think. They were great. They had immaculate harmonies. They were fantastic singers. And then they got out of the business for longest time, for school, college, and whatever. When they came back, they produced one of the most critically loved albums of its type. It's very much folky alternative. There's electric in here too, but it's a far cry from the early stuff when they were teenagers. It was the first of 3 albums that became staples on album AAA adult album alternative in its very early infancy. And I can never get enough of this album. The title is not anywhere on it except the spine, and I'll have to flip it around to you. Let me ask, do you recognize them? There's one of them. There's the other one. Back in the day, they were Andy and David Williams. In 1987, they are the Williams brothers at number 4 with 2 stories. This album is phenomenal. I mean, I never would have expected them to come back ever, and then they came back in such a dynamically great way with an album full of great music, all of which, or most of which, they wrote, and they would follow it up with the self-titled album from 1991 and Harmony Hotel from 1993 or 94. Everything fantastic. Once again, I gotta do the other side. Side 1 is Some Become Strangers, Inch by Inch, How Long, Keeping Me Alive, and Spark of Life. Side 2 is You Like Me, Straight A's in Love, State of Mind, All Pumped Up, and Rain Came Down. Now, of course, they were the nephews of singer Andy Williams. That's where they got their early fame. But this is the kind of music that would eventually lead me to more of this. In the 90s, there was, in addition to the other two albums from them, there were, I got to be a fan of Duncan Sheik, the band that did Breakfast at Tiffany's, Deep Blue Something, has the very same feel. And more recently, stuff like Sawyer Fredericks does. This album, very, very underheard, underseen, and vastly underrated. Number 4, 1987, The Williams Brothers and their return to the music. Two stories. Number 3, another artist I have adored since he debuted with this album. He continues to record every now and then, although for the last 20 years his, pardon the pun, principal job has been high school principal in his native Honolulu. He is one of the best vocalists ever. He was the top vocalist of all the teen acts that hit in the 1980s. This album was produced by Leonard Silver, executive producer, produced by Jay Stone, and a lot of the music was written and arranged by Tom and John Keane, the Keane brothers. What a combination this was. And I tell you, I'll take him over any other pop teen star that came out in the same time frame or even later. Number 3, the debut album from Glenn Medeiros. He was 16 when this was released. Nothing's Gonna Change My Love for You, Lonely Won't Leave Me Alone, The Wings of My Heart, A Stranger Today, Watching Over You, What's It Gonna Take, Fool's Affair, You Left the Loneliest Heart, and Knocking at Your Door. The 3 singles, Nothing's Gonna Change My Love for You, Lonely Won't Leave Me Alone, and Watching Over You, all number 1 Kirkham Report hits. Loneliest Heart would later be recorded by Boys Club the following year. That was the duo consisting of Joe Pasquale and Gene Hunt, formerly Eugene Wolfgram of the Jets. This album is fantastic. If you like teen pop ballads, which is what it is, and I've always been that kind of stuff, there is no better than Glenn Medeiros. He produced another great album, Not Me, which Tom Keane is actually audibly doing backup vocals on some of these on that album. And then his self-titled album for MCA, which produced his number 1 hit, She Ain't Worth It, with Bobby Brown. He's recorded, as I said, sporadically throughout the rest of his life. A couple of live albums. All have been recorded in and around his native Honolulu. Dude, I love you. This is one of my favorite artists of all time. This was on Amherst Records. First 2 albums were on that small label. And what a great, awesome debut this was. Number 3 for 1987, Glenn Medeiros from Glenn Medeiros. Okay, here's where I freak people out. Because people are probably coming into 1987 going, oh, I know what came out in 1987. That's going to be his number 1 album. Nope, number 2. Now, it is one of my favorite albums by them. It is a classic album with multiple classic hits. It firmly established them as the rock gods they are. And yet it's only number 2 on my list because there's one album I love even more from this year. But You can't go wrong with them. And I've said that before many times. Number 2 for 1987, Hysteria, Def Leppard. Yes, it's not number 1. Um, do I really need to go over the songs? Women, Rocket, Animal, Love Bites, Pour Some Sugar on Me, Armageddon It, all singles. Gods of War, Don't Shoot Shotgun, Run Riot, Hysteria, Excitable, and Love and Affection. 1 number 1, 2 number 2s, and a third and a fourth one that was a top 10. This established them as the superstars they truly deserve to be. Look at that artwork. I have artwork like that, backgrounds I can use on video. This was also the final Def Leppard album to feature Steve Clark, who would pass away in the interval between Hysteria and Adrenalize in 1992. I mean, Pour Some Sugar on Me, Love Bites, and Armageddon It are in my top 5. I mean, I did my countdown of my favorite Def Leppard hits, and those are up there. I love them all. I love the whole album, and I always will, and I will always love these guys because they're fantastic. But it is number 2. Number 2, 1987, Hysteria, Def Leppard. Now, you're asking yourself, holy God, he didn't pick Def Leppard for number 1. What is his number 1 from 1987? Well, I'll tell you what it's not. The following albums, I only have on CD, so they were unavailable for me to choose. They include Rain Dancing by Alison Moyet, the debut self-titled album from Richard Marx, Whitney by Whitney Houston, Bad by Michael Jackson, Faith by George Michael, and Whenever You Need Somebody, the debut album from Rick Astley. Those are only on CD. This album I did not find on CD until the mid-90s or the 2000s. But I had it the day it came out and watched it completely freaking stiff in the States. Not one hit came off of it here. It had several hits overseas in Europe and particularly in the UK. This album is my favorite of all their albums, and it is one of my favorite albums of all time. It would easily make my top 100 albums of all time. It would be ranked probably in the top 10 or top 20. It is crystal perfect 1980s synth pop at its finest. Better than anything Wham came out with, anything that General Public came out with, any of the other bands that came out with, Tears for Fears, any of them. This is the pinnacle. And it's a damn shame it did so poorly in the United States. My number 1 album from 1987, Dancing on the Couch, Go West. This album is fan-freaking-tastic from beginning to end. I Want to Hear It From You, Little Caesar, Mask of Love, From Baltimore to Paris, True Colors, The King is Dead, Chinese Whispers, Don't Look Down, the sequel, which actually did chart. It's the only thing that charted. Crossfire and Dangerous. I don't know what goes through the minds of the American record buying public at times. From Baltimore to Paris, one of my favorite power ballads of all time. I mean, this thing was right up there with Careless Whisper. It is phenomenally good, and nobody really noticed it, which is a shame, because it, like another album I'll talk about, or should have already talked about, I'm not sure when it came out in the States, John Farnham's Whispering Jack. I think I should have done that last year. It completely stiffed in America. Completely. Except for one song, Don't Look Down, the sequel, which was a re-recorded, remixed version of a song from their debut solo album. Debut self-titled album from 1985. I'm still at a loss as to why this has never been picked up as a true lost gem of the 1980s. This would be a time I would urge you to do so, because these two guys are amazing. This album is amazing, and it deserves way more than it gets. I've been saying that a lot lately, but it is utterly fantastic. And I'm really sorry, guys, that America gave you the shaft. America always gave you guys the shaft, except for a couple of single hits, you know. Number one for 1987, Go West, Dancing on the Couch, in my top 20 albums of all time, very likely. So, let me recap one more time. Number 10, Ready or Not, Lou Gramm. Number 9, New Monkeys by New Monkeys. Number 8, Cher by Cher. Number 7, Appetite for Destruction by Guns N' Roses. Number 6, ESP by Bee Gees. Number 5, Surfing with the Alien, Joe Satriani. Number 4, Two Stories by the Williams Brothers. Number 3, Glenn Medeiros by Glenn Medeiros. Number 2, Hysteria, Def Leppard. And number 1, Dancing on the Couch by Go West. Now, 1988 is going to be a bear. I've been going through my collection. I can only find two vinyl albums that I have from 1988. Now, I got to go through and find, because obviously the dates are hard to find. I'm going to have to go through individually and pull stuff out. 88 was a true watershed year. It became impossible to get vinyl locally, and I had to switch to CDs for the most part. I still got vinyl from the record clubs, because I still love vinyl. And I still got 45s, although that also was switching to cassette singles, which I hated, but didn't have much choice because they were in. There's a lot to come, but we're going to have to make some changes in a couple of weeks. And I will tell you more about that when we get there. Next time, 1988. Thank you for liking my show if you have already. If you've subscribed, terrific. If you haven't, please do. I'd really appreciate it. Also, don't forget to share when you can. And please leave a comment. I love hearing from you about everything I do here. And check the show notes for more information on every other thing I do, every other thing I have out there. I hope that you will take the time and enjoy what I have to offer, whether it's one of my weekly shows or one of my specials, or just my off videos for like contests or whatever, like the lottery videos, or my daily Obscuria Monday through Friday at 11 a.m. Any way you can come in, I appreciate it, and I hope you will continue to do so. Until next time, for Vinyl Recall, I'm TC Kirkham, TKR Video Central, and the Kirkham Report. Keep those coming, baby. Ciao, baby.